event before.
No, but this is the first time. So, welcome to our third session of the track Visual Perfection. And the topic we're going to listen to now is creating digital PR strategies to navigate the ever-changing news agenda. And a speaker and presenter we've got today, David White from the UK. And David has led PR and outreach strategies for some of the global's biggest brands. With a background in business management and marketing, David has a great and deep understanding of the wider marketing mix and how to get this to contribute to brands' bottom line. So, David, we're looking forward to your presentation, and yep, I'll let you to it.
Thank you very much. It was a very professional bio. It was good. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope everyone's safe and well. I'm just going to share my screen, and if you just give me 2 seconds, then I can share it and we can jump straight into the presentation. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that now. Okay, so my name is David White and I'm the Content Marketing Director at Connected Free. We are a performance marketing agency in Leeds, London and Manchester in the UK, although we do operate internationally as well. Now, today I'm going to talk about creating PR strategies to navigate the ever-changing news agenda. Now, in particular, what I want to talk about is digital PR and link building. So how we can run link building campaigns that get us links of high authority domains while navigating a news agenda that can change in the flick of a switch. So before I get into the meat of the presentation, I want to start with a gif of a sad dog and an apology. So the apology is that I didn't want to start my presentation talking about COVID, because I'm aware that we've all heard the word COVID every single day for the past 2.5 years. And like I said at the beginning of the presentation, I hope everyone has been safe and well during this crazy period. So I actually wanted to start today's presentation talking about something a little bit more upbeat, something a little bit more happier. But the fact of the matter is I couldn't do it because COVID has had such a huge impact on the digital PR and link building kind of sphere and digital as a whole. Because what we saw with COVID, when we went into lockdown, we saw a huge amount of people move online to buy services and goods. In fact, I have some stats on that just to show you. So during the COVID period between 2019 and 2020, in the UK, as an example, 1.3% in 2019, 1.3% of retail sales came from e-commerce. But during the pandemic, during COVID, that went up to 5.7%. And I know that not everybody listening to this presentation will be working in e-commerce, but e-commerce gives us a really good idea of how many people have moved online to start to buy services and goods. It was a similar story in China, 3% before the pandemic, 4.8% during, and the same in the United States, Spain. Now, I get that we saw a huge amount of people move online, and now as the doors are opening again and we're going to the post-pandemic world, these numbers may start to drop. But ultimately, because there was a huge surge of people moving online, there was then a huge surge in people looking for link building and digital PR. Now, the reason that people were looking for that is because obviously with this huge newfound audience, people wanted to be the most visible site. They wanted to make sure that when somebody was searching for a product or service that they offered, that they were the most visible, that they were the first person somebody clicked on, that was a person who you bought from. Now, just a couple more stats on the growth of content marketing and link building. So this is global content marketing stats. So in 2021 alone, we saw an increase of just over 15%. And by 2025, the global content marketing world will be worth just over $417 billion. So because COVID has really kind of aggressively fast forwarded the world of digital PR and link building, because obviously, like I say, more people are moving online, and now more people than ever before seem to be investing in digital infrastructure and therefore link acquisition as part of their SEO strategy. But just because COVID's moved people online, what it's also taught us is just how fast that news agenda can change. So nowadays, a news agenda can change literally within seconds. Breaking news can happen within seconds. Let me just show you a couple of examples. So let's spare a thought for these campaigns. Now, just these campaigns were campaigns that I had run. They were just campaigns I had seen. So there's 2 campaigns here that were done for link building purposes. One was a survey around the best and worst airports in the UK, and the other was a survey around the state of business travel. Now, these were both launched in February of 2020, and I presume that the outreach was meant to happen over February and into March. But obviously that couldn't happen because the world had locked down in March and travel had stopped. So if you had invested time, if you had invested resource and money into building a campaign for link building purposes, and then suddenly something happens in the news and it means that you can't run with that, then that's a huge, huge challenge. Another challenge that we're seeing, what PRs are saying, this is from a survey done in 2020 with PR professionals, is that the third biggest challenge that they're seeing is cutting through the cluster of noise. So we know that there is a huge audience online now. We know that there is more demand than ever before in digital PR, in SEO, because people are investing in it to capitalize on that audience. But we also know that the news agenda can change really quickly. So the question becomes, how do we de-risk our campaigns? If it is something we're going to do, if we are going to run link building and digital PR campaigns, how do we de-risk them to make sure that if the news agenda changes, that our campaigns aren't wasted? Well, let me introduce you the standard digital PR strategy. So most PRs will go to a company and say, you know what, I'll do you 6 campaigns over 6 months, 1 campaign a month. That's just an example. And these campaigns are normally things like data-led surveys, interactive full pages, dream jobs, PR indexes, etc. Now, they will do just campaign work. But the challenge I face, or the challenge I face back to everybody listening to this conversation, is that campaign work is actually only around 60-70% of the link opportunity in front of you. And it also opens you up to an absolute huge risk, because if you invested the time and money and effort into building a campaign and then suddenly the news agenda flips and changes and you can't outreach that campaign anymore, you don't want to get that to go to waste. So what your digital PR strategy should look like is this. So you should still do the campaign work, which is what I call planned PR. That's that bit in the middle there. You should still do that. But at the same time, you should complement your PR campaigns with proactive and reactive PR. So proactive PR is taking real things that you're doing as a business and making them link worthy. And I'll show you some examples of how to do that. And hopefully it's super, super quick and super, super effective as well. So hopefully you can go away tonight and build links to your site or your client sites or whoever it is using this tactic. And then there's obviously reactive PR as well, which is quite self-explanatory. It's reacting to news events with different comments and things like that to get links back. Now, by doing this, not only do we get more links, we get an always-on approach to link building, so we never stop link building, but we also de-risk our campaigns, because if something went wrong, if the news agenda had changed and we can't outreach our campaign anymore, then we still got proactive and reactive PR to fall back on, meaning that we don't stop building links, we don't stop increasing our organic visibility, and therefore we don't stop increasing revenue. So let me explain what the proactive and the reactive PR actually is. So let me go into proactive first. So I've got you 10 questions here that you should ask yourself, okay? So do you, like I said, with proactive PR, it's essentially PRing anything that you're doing as a business already. So this is on top of the campaign work. So for example, ask yourself, do you work with any charities? Because a lot of businesses do, but they don't do anything with it. If so, if you do work with a charity, can you get a link off that charity site? Can you work with that charity's press office to amplify the story even further? Are you launching any new products? Again, it may just sound quite boring. It may sound quite standard. But if you're launching new products, can you go to trade press and get some links back that way? Are you on a recruitment drive? Again, I see everybody is recruiting at the moment across many, many sectors. Okay, and they just see that as business as usual activity. Well, you can absolutely get links with that. If you're recruiting in a certain area, can you go to local government bodies in that area and explain that you're opening up jobs in the area? Can you go to recruitment and business and trade sites? What other marketing plans do you have? Can you make them link worthy? Do you have any CSR work? Do you have a spokesperson? Are you seeing any consumer trends? Consumer trends are data that you can pass to the media as exclusives and get links back that way. A list of old campaigns as well. So if your link building is starting to dry up because maybe the news agenda's changed or whatever, why don't you just revisit some of the campaigns that you ran 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever, and see if you can just revisit them really quickly and get links back. And do you have a content calendar, and do you have a list of old media placements? So can you go to journalists who have covered you before and see if they want to cover you again with something similar? Now, I didn't want to sit here and just explain what proactive PR was. I thought, I'll show you some actual examples of how I have done this. So let me introduce you to GoodMove. So GoodMove are an online estate agent that we work with. Now, we do planned campaigns with them. We do really big campaigns with them that build huge, huge links. We also do reactive PR with them as well. But when I was analyzing their site, I found that they had some blog posts, but this is just as I started working with them, that was already written on their sites. Blog posts that they had just written to put up there because they were of interest to their customers. So 2 of the blog post examples here, one of them is selling tips to sell your flat fast, and the other one is should I rent or sell out my house? So this was just a blog post that they put on site, which most businesses do. But I could get links from that. And I can guarantee there are blog posts on your sites right now that you could easily get into the national media. So, for example, that How to Sell Your Flat Fast campaign got me 15 links and the other one got me 10. And yeah, 15 links, 10 links, it's not going to break the internet, but that's better than nothing. That's 25 links of something that I didn't even need to do, something you'd already created. And obviously, when you combine that with the planned work and when you combine that with the reactive work, you then start to see huge amounts of link volumes, as well as de-risking your link strategy. One more example is K9 Cottages. K9 Cottages are a dog-friendly staycation company in the UK. And again, we do campaign work with them. Absolutely, we do. We do reactive work with them. But they, again, have blog posts on their site from the past year or 2 years, which we can build links with. So as an example here, dog travel tips, dog-friendly beaches, or keeping dogs calm on bonfire night. These were all just blog posts that were on their site. And I built, over 20 links off the back of this. Over 20 links from something that they'd already created. So there's nothing that you need to do. You just need to pick it up and push it out the door. And again, when you combine that with the reactive work, and when you combine that with the planned work, you start to see that you're building much more links than your competitors. The relevancy is as high as it can be. You're getting links off massive, massive sites. And if the news agenda did change, if something went and changed in the world, it doesn't matter because I've got enough things going on that I can still build links to. It's not sexy work, but it is consistent. Okay, so please, taking anything from this conversation, this presentation, when you go to your lunch after this or whatever the next talk is after this, make sure you analyze your sites, go through all blog posts, see what's going on as a business, speak to your managers, and I can guarantee you there are stories there that the media will want to pick up on. And you can build links really quickly, really easy. And then it doesn't matter what the world is throwing at us. It doesn't matter what the news agenda is. You can navigate it by having something that is consistently building links. Now, let me explain the reactive side as well to that 3-piece model that I showed you earlier. So reactive is quite self-explanatory. It's reacting to news events, through comments or whatever. But the fact is, how do we find them stories really quickly? Because it's normally the first person who gets out there gets the coverage and gets the links. So I want to introduce you to social listening. So social listening, for you those that don't know, is there's millions of social listening tools out there. A quick Google search will show you them, and many of them offer trials as well. So if you do want to try do this, obviously just set up some trials separately to this conversation. But social listening allows you to input your brand. It allows you to input topics. It allows you to input your social channels or whatever into the system, and it will show you who's talking about it, where they're talking about it, what sentiment, what other conversations that they're talking about, who they're following. And it will also show you emerging topics. So you can put all your information into social listening, and it will show you who your customers are, and it will show you the conversations that they're starting to talk about. And if you can jump on that trending conversation with a reactive comment or something, you can build really good links really, really, really quickly and super, super low resource. The 2 screenshots I've shown here are from the social listening tool that I use, which is called Linkfluence. I actually just inputted the word digital PR into Linkfluence just for the sake of this the presentation. So you can see that when we're talking about digital PR, people are talking about Google, people are talking about search engine optimization, people are talking about backlinks and Bing. And again, if we have a look at the platforms that they're talking about it on, the majority of people talk about it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then websites as well. But ultimately, when you dive deep into this data, which I couldn't show you on one slide, it will start to show me the emerging topics. So if something's breaking, you can see that straight away within seconds. And then if you want to release a comment, you can do, and you can get some really good links back. Example results from the past few weeks. Again, I didn't want to sit here and just preach how to do this. It really, really works, and it's super, super easy. So in the past few weeks, I've got links for my clients off these sites. There's 2 examples here that I want to kind of just dive in on first. The Sun. So this one was one in the UK, admittedly. So there was a storm the other week, Storm Eunice, it was called, and it was actually a good move. And we saw that people started to talk about the storm, people talking about how bad it's going to be. So we jumped on it with a quick comment, and we got links off the national media within minutes. Super, super easy. And again, there's another one at the bottom there, which is Halifax House Price Index. Ultimately, that is a report which shows how much houses are worth. And again, we jumped on it really quickly, and we got links back. So when you combine that reactive and proactive work with obviously the plan stuff, you have an absolute ton of links. You can navigate the news agenda easy. It doesn't matter what the news agenda throws at you. And I can guarantee you can beat your competition. Now, on the social listening front, the tool that I've just shown you, Linkfluence, is a paid-for tool, and more social listening tools are paid for. There are free social listening tools. They're just not as detailed, but I thought I'd show you some. So the one that I would recommend is called Social Searcher. They call themselves a social media search engine. You can, again, input topics, input websites, input whatever, and it will show you who's talking about them, where they're talking about them. It's not as detailed. I think they do offer a paid-for version, which is a little bit more detailed, but please have a play around with it. It's completely free, and I can guarantee you'll be able to find something in there that you can use to build links with. Another tool that I want to show you is called Audience. Now, Audience is actually a paid-for tool, but they do offer you one free report, and it is unbelievable. So you should make sure you check this out. So again, you can input your brand, your topics, like, or whatever it is, or your keywords, and it will pull some really, really detailed audience information, which I can guarantee will help you either with on-site content or certainly with digital PR and link building. So like I say, you only get one free report with Audience, but it's definitely worth checking it out. It's a really cool tool, and it's one that most people don't talk about as well. So I always like to bring it in these kind of conferences because I think it's something that people don't know about. So at this point, you've created a PR strategy. You've created a PR strategy that's going to build you some real good links. That's going to actually build links that drive organic visibility or drive performance rather than just being links for links' sake. And the strategy that you've put in place, because of the proactive, because of the reactive, means that if the news agenda changes and say, for example, you're pushing out a travel campaign and then suddenly there is another travel ban, it doesn't matter because you can still build links with the other elements of that strategy. But all of that means nothing if it isn't for good outreach, media outreach. So I want to touch on this for the last few slides. So I want to explain a tool called BuzzStream. Again, I'm not sure how many people know about this or how many people don't know about this, but essentially BuzzStream is it's almost like a CRM database for media outreach. So you can input all your journalist emails in there and all their names, and you can email them through the system, and it will tell you things like when you last emailed them, what kind of email you sent them, what subject line, even how many times they've opened that email. And it's really, really cool. But what you can do, which is really clever, is you can run A/B testing with it. So say I'm going to push out a campaign to 200 journalists, okay? You might want to take 20 of them journalists and split them into two groups of 10. And you might say, I'm going to send this group subject line 1 and this group subject line 2. So two different subject titles or whatever, two different email templates. And if group 1 gets you 6 links and a 90% open rate, but group 2 gets you absolutely nothing, then you're probably going to want to use this template to go through the rest of your journalists. And then you can start to make sure that you're actually testing your outreach and making sure that your work is actually delivering results, which will be backlinks. Also, aim high. I don't work with bloggers. I haven't bought a link in, 9 years now. I don't need to buy links. I work with the biggest sites on the internet across international markets, or myself and my team do. So I did an experiment a couple of weeks back, and I got a link placed. This is in the US, admittedly, with Fox News 28. Huge site, massive site, great link, obviously read by millions upon millions of people. And because I landed that big site, I got 6 natural links because of it. Okay, so if you miss out all the low quality people, forget them. They're not going to pass you any SEO value. They're not going to drive traffic to your site. They're not going to really do much. If you create stories that are of interest to national media and target national media, I can guarantee you not only will your SEO increase better because obviously it's more powerful sites, but you'll start to pick up natural links at the same time. So I built 1 link, but got 7 because 6 people had read Fox News and then covered it themselves. So that is how you create a really powerful outreach strategy. Always aim high. Batch analysis is another one. Again, this is an outreach tactic that isn't necessarily used by a lot of people, and I'm not overly sure why. So often when you're working with huge sites, so for example, the BBC, what might happen is that journalists will read the BBC, cover the story, but then link to the BBC instead of linking through to me or my client. So what you want to do is you want to find out the links that your links got. And I know it sounds very Inception-esque, but it's true. If you take all the links you have built and put them into Ahrefs batch analysis tool, I think you add up to 200 domains. Show you how many referring domains they got. So, for example, if, I don't know, The Guardian had read the BBC and linked to the BBC, but the BBC were actually talking about me, then I could maybe go back to that Guardian journalist and say, look, I was actually behind that story. Would you mind updating your link through to my website? And you get some really powerful links back doing that. And again, that's just being clever with outreach. There's nothing kind of special about it. It's just taking that outreach analysis one step further. Building detailed media lists is absolutely crucial. So you can't just email random people, okay? You need to make sure that you're building, and when a media list, by the way, for those that don't know, is essentially the people who you're going to email or you're going to call or you're going to sell the story into. So there are two ways that you can do this. You can use a media database, and I'm not going to focus on this point too much because there are millions of media databases out there. I've just taken an example of Gorkana. I actually use a media database called Vuelio or Vuelio, I don't know how it's pronounced, because it's really good for international contacts. But yeah, use your media database and find people who cover the subject that you're wanting to cover. Find people who talk about things that you're talking about and email them. You can also use BuzzStream. So they have a cool tool which allows you to input topics, and it'll show you journalists who talk about or tweet about them topics. And again, you can then target them journalists. And I've put in Ahrefs there, but any link index tool will do this really. You want to find out who's covered your competitors as well. So if your competitors are getting loads of links off these sites, but you're not, then you probably want to start targeting them sites. When you use Ahrefs or any link index tool to do that, make sure you don't just focus on competitors. Make sure you actually focus on people who talk about the same things you do. The best example I can give you of this is if you were a comparison site. If you were a comparison site, you talk about saving money, probably. And you wouldn't class a voucher site as your competitor, but they talk about the same things you do. So make sure you're analyzing their link profiles as well as your competitors, because you'll be able to get some really cool links off the back of that. And some final points before I kind of wrap up. When you are doing media outreach and when you are outreaching to journalists, make sure you only go with relevant information, okay? And forgive the terrible GIFs on this site. I don't know why I do GIFs, but I do. But only go with relevant information. If you go with irrelevant information to a journalist, two things will happen. That journalist will never cover you again, okay? Even if you have a story which is relevant in the future. Plus, you've just wasted everybody's time, including yourselves. Don't go to them if it's irrelevant. Respect their time. If COVID has taught us anything, it's that newsrooms have been cut to skeleton staff quite a lot of the time, okay? Journalists don't have the resource that they used to. So if you've sent them an email, if you sent them a tweet, if you've rang them, however you've got in contact with them and they've got the press release or whatever it is in front of them, respect their time. Don't be nudging them every 5 minutes saying, have you covered my story? Have you covered my story? Because that will just wind them up. It'll annoy them and they'll never cover your story again. Kind of leads on to my next point. Again, a terrible gif of a sad cat. Do not harass them, okay? Just don't. Look, it's really simple, and I'm going to be really blunt and brutal with this. When you are doing media outreach, you're going to email people who don't want to cover your campaign. It happens to us all. You just get on with it. You know, stiff upper lip, push your shoulders down and move on. Don't worry about it. Focus on somebody who will cover your campaign, but do not harass them and do not ruin that relationship. And then finally, make them look good. Really is as simple as that. If you make the journalist look good, they're more likely to cover your campaign. Okay? If they're more likely to cover your campaign, you're more likely to get a link. It really is as simple as that. So make sure the story that they are able to write about makes them look good in front of their boss. And if you follow them outreach tips, if you follow that strategy that I've set in place with, the proactives and the reactives and the planned, it doesn't matter what the news agenda throws at you. It doesn't matter because you're going to be having things that can build links, that you can build links with no matter what. And if you follow the outreach tips that I've given you, you should be able to convert quite a lot of links. Digital PR is not easy, okay, especially when you're working with massive sites. But I can guarantee you, if you follow these tips, if you follow what I've just said, or grab me afterwards on Twitter, my Twitter is at David_White90. If you speak to me on there, I can guarantee you can build massive links to your site that will not just be a link, but it will be a link that drives performance and moves the needle. Thank you for listening to me. I'm going to unshare my screen now, I think. I don't know if that stopped sharing. Yeah, I think I'm back.
Yeah, so that was really very interesting. I took as well a lot of notes. So let's see. We haven't got any questions yet. Whilst people are adding questions, just to remind everybody, by participating actively in each session, you have a chance to win one of the books that are offered by our event sponsors. Whilst we are waiting for questions, I have one question actually, right? As you were telling us about how to treat, of course, the journalists and so on. The key thing is, of course, you mentioned some media databases for national and international, like BuzzStream and so on. What was the one that you mentioned first where you weren't quite sure how it's called?
So I
Or how
think
you
it's
pronounce it?
called, yeah, it's either called Vulio or Vuelio. So Vulio or Vuelio is what I use. So it's like VUEILO. I think that's how it's spelled.
Okay.
And it's really good because I do a lot of international PR. So I work in countries across Europe as well as the US and the UK. So it's really good at continually updating and finding journalists within multiple kind of territories and countries.
Yeah, that's great. And for the UK, what do you recommend?
There's absolutely loads for the UK. So there's one called Gokana, which I've used before. There's also one called Roxhill Media. But again, I think honestly, all these media databases offer like 30 days trial or whatever.
Yeah.
So if it is something you're interested in, just trial as many as possible, and then just choose the one that suits your needs the best, really.
Exactly. And Buzz Media, does that have as well its own media list?
No. So it does have a tool, I believe, which like helps you identify journalists, but then I think you have to find their contact details. BuzzStream is it's great if you're doing any form of media outreach. It's fantastic. It makes everything so much easier. So I've got a big PR team underneath me now at Connected Free, and it's great for just keeping everything in one place and nice and neat and tidy. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I look here at the chats. I see people have been sharing all sorts of comments. Anybody got any? Here we have the first question. So, is it crucial to use PR for smaller companies which main traffic comes from the internet?
So yeah, well, not yes and no. So ultimately, if the main source of traffic is organic, so through search engines, obviously depending on where you are, depends on which search engine. I mean, digital PR is a huge ranking factor. It's not the only ranking factor at all. But when, if you were to break it down into on-site and off-site, then it's probably one of the biggest off-site ranking factors. So you have to look at what your competitors are doing. What we've seen, though, this is the challenge a lot of people face, is we've seen a lot of people, because of COVID and because of that surge of people moving online, invest in digital PR. So companies that were never doing it before are now doing it. And if your competitors are doing it, then you're kind of forced in a way to do it to keep up with them. Because doing it correctly, doing link building correctly, as long as you've got everything else covered, your on-site content, your technical, all that, it will really propel your rankings. It really will propel your rankings and drive more traffic from organic. But it has to be done correctly, but it also has to be complemented with everything on-site. But what we are seeing is a lot of people now, again, people who weren't doing it before are now doing it because demand is so high. Yeah, so it depends on your competitors in short, but it's definitely something to worth looking at.
And so the next question is here. Let's say you are working for an IT company, and at the time of announcing something great, the war in Ukraine suddenly starts. Do you just put everything on hold, or move on with while still acknowledging what is going on in the world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's an extremely sensitive subject, the war in Ukraine. And I think no matter what happens, with digital PR, we still have a moral reason to make sure that we're not seen to be doing anything which could aggravate anything. So I think it depends on what the announcement is. I I think the sake of this talk, the way that I was selling it in is if you were running link building activity, and say, for example, the war in Ukraine had hindered your link building activity, then obviously go sensitively and stop doing whatever it is. But if you run proactive and reactive PR, you should still be able to build PR and build links, even though the news agenda has changed. It's a very difficult one to say because it's quite a specific question, and it depends what the announcement was, which you were pushing out. But ultimately, if you're running proactive and reactive PR, you should still be able to build links, but don't do anything that would, I don't know, be seen to be capitalizing or kind of doing anything to talk about Ukraine. So we still have a moral kind of stance, I suppose, in that sense.
Yeah, and I suppose as well that, of course, at that time there's so much happening that it's difficult to cut through the noise.
It's a very complex one.
Yeah, and then your effort. So the next question here is, how can you effectively support one cause without cutting off customers who don't view it the same way?
I'm not sure about this question. So I think, how can you effectively support one cause without customers? So I presume what you mean, forgive me if I've understood wrong here, is if you're pushing out a story which your customers may disagree with, I think you need to just be honest and address it. So if the customers have questions around it, and whatever, I mean, again, it's hard to say unless I know the exact cause, but if the customers have questions around it, and they're maybe concerned about whatever it is that you're pushing out, maybe you can answer those questions and turn that into a PR sense in its own right. So you can still push out whatever it is that you want to push out while addressing your current customers' concerns and pushing that out as a similar PR story. Again, it's very difficult to give specifics unless you know the actual cause that you're pushing.
Exactly. So the next question here I see is there any way we can measure the connection between the press release team and public relations team?
Oh yeah. So I presume from this, there's I mean, digital PR is so good in the sense that traditionally, years ago, you would, traditional PR, you would work with radios, you would work with papers, you do all that kind of stuff. And it's really difficult to measure the impact of that. So traditionally, people used to measure things like reach or how many people could have potentially read the story, and quite fluffy numbers. But with digital PR, you open up a whole new world and ability to measure and really track performance. So PR campaign, and I'm going out, then I'm getting links back. You now have access to stats such as how much traffic came to the site. Did that improve organic rankings? When people came to the site, where did they go to next? Did they convert? Was there any assisted conversions? So by using tools like GA, Google Analytics, you are completely able to measure the impact, which is something that traditionally PRs have always struggled with. But now, because it's digital, we absolutely can do.
So the next question, is it important to keep the same contact person for some PR sites you use often, or people in news sites are changing quite a lot, so rather always contact at general PR email address so it is 100% reachable by anyone?
Yeah, I think, again, there's two ways to answer this, really. So if you have a really strong contact, like a relationship with somebody there, so if you're trying to get a placement on a site and you have a really strong contact there, then yeah, absolutely email them. But I'd email them both. I mean, I wouldn't kind of just do one or the other. I mean, you can, if you have a really strong contact, go to them, or if you want to go to a news desk, go to them. I would email them both. I would edge your bets. I mean, I don't see if there's any negatives that can come of that. The only thing that could happen from that is that more people see the story, and therefore there's more chance that they could cover it. So don't be afraid to kind of do both of them.
Okay, and the next question here: what about affiliate marketing companies? We don't do PR for the company per se, but we do link building for our websites.
Yeah, again, really good question. I think I've worked with affiliate sites in the past, for example, like in the iGaming space. So like you'd have like a casino affiliate site, and link building is exactly the same for them as it is for an actual brand or an actual sports book in that case. So I don't think link building differs just because you're an affiliate site. As long as you can host content on your site and you can find out relevant conversations and topics to target, which if you follow my earlier stats, you will be able to, then link building will be exactly the same for you as it would be for anybody else. And in fact, again, reach out to me on Twitter afterwards, because I've got loads of examples of it. Probably way too many of that I could talk about on this talk. But yeah, it's exactly the same for you as it would be for a main player, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so looking. Any more questions coming at the moment? Let's see. We're good in time. We've still got 9 minutes left to answer a few more questions. So you broke up the system of the digital PR into the reactive, planned, and the proactive area, so that actually it then helps you to go and get a more consistent way of pushing out content, generating more leads, being more relevant as well, and eventually getting the story into the, let's say, the mainstream media, which of course in the end helps as well, of course, the brand, the image. Everybody notices this, and this company is doing this and this, or somehow connected with this top people become more aware. Brand awareness and eventually brand assistance or insistence, let's say, to a certain degree. Let's see, any more questions? No. People are maybe thinking about things. Yeah, it's been lots of content.
Yeah, if there is any more questions afterwards, I mean, I know that you might think of them afterwards. Like I say, my Twitter is @David_White90. So just reach out to me on there. I've got loads of examples, and I tweet about this stuff continually. So yeah, if you have anything, just reach out to me there.
Great. So Now, I suppose, of course, when you go and build your media list from these databases, you will try, of course, to find who is actually relevant to your topic area, to your niche. Let's say you have some kind of products or anything. For instance, education material, then you, of course, focus somebody who covers the area of education and that.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody who covers hiking and that.
Yeah, exactly. It's always about being relevant. Relevancy is the main thing. Like I say, I understand that with the news agenda, it changes so rapidly, and you just need to, if you have to keep up link building to keep your competitors, then do it, but just do it in the right way and to the right people. I think there's 2 more questions that have just come through. Sorry, I'm just reading them now.
Yep. Have you ever felt uncomfortable with a certain action you had to undertake due to the reaction from the audience which a certain company poses?
Yeah. So, I mean, not particularly. I don't think I have exact answers on this one. I think what I presume you mean there, forgive me if I'm wrong, is if you push out something and you get some negative feedback. The truth of the matter is, I mean, I only work with companies who I'm comfortable working with. Again, I have kind of high morals on that. And when you're pushing out stories to the media, we don't really sell any products. Like, what we do is we focus on conversations that our target audience are having. So there's never really any negative backlash, because if our audience is talking about this and we can talk about it, then we'll talk about it, rather than us pushing products or pushing a certain agenda. It's more about becoming part of their conversations and building links that way. So you never really have a negative backlash in that sense.
Yeah. Then we have one last one: free press releases versus paid. What are your thoughts on it? Is it worth to pay?
So I presume from this question, again, I could be wrong, is you mean if you build a press release and then pay for it to go out on a wire type thing? If that's the case, never do it. Please don't do it. Stop doing it. I don't see any value in it at all. Write your press release. A company, you need to write your press release. You need to do that yourself, and then outreach it or work with an agency to outreach it or whatever, completely above board and white hat. Don't do any of the kind of paid for stuff. It just does. I promise you, it does not pass any value. I can't stress that enough. You just need to you need to run PR, but with a digital mindset. Okay, so PR isn't a case of picking up something and paying for it. PR is a case of picking something up and speaking to relevant journalists, speaking to high authority domains, and then getting equity back that way. And honestly, you will benefit so much more by doing that. And I know it's a bit harder, but it drives much more value.
Yeah, wonderful. So 5 minutes left. Any more questions? So whilst we're waiting and people are maybe adding more questions in relation to the last question, I suppose, of course, it's clear that, of course, with paid kind of topics, they're using some kind of platforms to spread an article to lots of different, let's say, sub websites of some kind of portals or even media platforms and so on, which maybe have found that as a source of income, knowingly that maybe they generate some kind of links, but nobody actually reads it because no journalist is actually going to look at it and take it and think using it. Might think, oh, it's just a normal link building spam.
Exactly.
I think but it makes the money.
So there's another question which is just mentioned about that paid for. So let's say our client has a news who wants to share and we pay for a press release, a news site to ask him money to post it on their site. Okay, so this is about paid link building or paid coverage. Don't do it. No, never. I promise you, just don't do it. I haven't done it in like I said, 9 years. You don't need to. I promise you, save your money. If you're doing PR right, you'll be able to build much better placements, much better links without having to pay for it. Plus, by paying for a link, you're going to get caught out at some point and you're going to get either penalized or it's just going to get devalued, which is even worse. What I would say is if you're talking to sites that are asking for money, you're talking to the wrong sites. Okay, if you take the exact same story that you're pushing out, but talk to the sites above them, you'll get it landed for free and you'll get better kind of high authority domains and better value from it. So in short, never buy a link. You don't need to. It baffles me that the year is 2022 and people still do it. And I get that, I get different markets, different countries, there's a kind of different landscape. It doesn't matter which country you're in. I promise you do not need to do it. So yeah, in short, speak to different sites who don't charge, save you money and get better results.
Yeah. So we've got just under a bit over 2 minutes left. Any new questions?
Yeah. Let's check.
Okay. Sometimes.
I think there's sometimes a bit of a delay on getting the questions through in the portal.
I think so too. Yeah.
I'm pretty impressed that I'm working from home at the moment. I'm pretty impressed that the dog hasn't barked or something like that to ruin this. I think we've done pretty well.
Yeah, it's actually quite good when you think of it. Sometimes lots of things can come in the way, whether it's your internet access, workman, somebody decides to open the ground somewhere and do some noisy work outside or anything.
Oh yeah, I've had millions of client meetings ruined because of that over the past 2 years. Yeah.
Or like everybody at home, the kids doing gym exercises and hopping around, and you hear all the noise. You can't record anything. We've got another comment here. Thank you for your time. It's great listening to you. Yep.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's been great. It's great to, shame we can't do this face to face, but obviously such is the modern world. The main thing is that everybody's safe and well and looking after themselves. But hopefully next year we'll be back face to face. But well, I said that last year as well, so we'll see what happens.
Exactly. So
I think there's just a minute left.
Yep.
I don't know if it's good or bad being the talk before everyone's lunch. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if everyone's just super tired and just wants to eat, or if they're going to be engaged or not.
Yeah, at least it's a motivation.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to say you're only 46 seconds away from everyone getting some food, so that's good.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'd like to thank everybody as well for having participated, listening to the presentation, and giving us quite some good questions that we can answer and go a bit deeper into what just has been presented. And David, I'd like to thank you as well for being here with us and having taken the time as well to prepare all the things and make it nice and informative for us so that we can as well go into lunch with lots of topics, content to think about it whilst we're going about our food and thinking what maybe next come to do. And your Twitter handle was David_White90?
90, yeah.
Great. Perfect. Then I'll end the session now and yeah, see you after the lunch break.
Thank you.